Welcome to Behind the Prop Podcast, where each week we will bring you stories, lessons, and some tips from behind the prop. Please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Pre-show checklist, microphones,
Check.
sound check,
Complete.
recording all channels,
Checked and verified. Pre-show checklist complete.
tower, Bravo Tango Papa is holding short, ready for departure.
Bravo, Tango Papa, you are clear for takeoff. Have a great show.
You're clear for takeoff and Wilco, Bravo Tango Papa.
What's up, Wally?
Hey, Bobby, how are you?
I'm good. Episode 4, this has been pretty exciting. We've got to see some statistics and analytics from around the country, people listening to our show. This is your first podcast. What are your thoughts so far, Wally?
You know, I'm having a good time. I've listened to, obviously, the podcasts that are online, and I'm happy with what we're doing, and I just hope that the listeners enjoy it. I hope they come back. I hope they tell their friends, and I hope we can make a difference.
All right, me too. So today is a story about making a difference. This is a near-miss story. If you saw it, you know the title, but this is one that's very near and dear to my heart. I think, as we talked about before we started recording, Wally, if you're in aviation, you've either heard of or had your own near-miss. True or false?
Absolutely.
So if you're out there and you're a student pilot or you're a pilot, you've heard these stories. This one was one that I was involved with, and as I still replay it today, many years later, I don't know why I'm still here. I really think that should have been the big one, and we'll talk more about it. But I think I'll start with just kind of telling the story about that day and let you ask some questions, Wally, about maybe what was happening or what I was thinking, and we'll tell the story, and hopefully we'll prevent someone from having a very similar near miss.
Okay, that sounds good.
So it was actually September the 26th, 2017, and I had just finished my instrument rating earlier in the year, had been taking some pretty decent trips with family and friends, meaning I was normally flying over 100 nautical miles to go do something, whether it was, I think I took my family back to school clothes shopping in San Marcos, and we flew there and took an Uber and bought a bunch of clothes and flew home. So I was taking advantage of my pilot's license at this point and having a lot of fun. And a friend of mine who happens to be the partner of mine at this flight school now, his name's Matt. We jumped in a plane. His wife had just bought him some time at the flight school in a flight bag. His birthday was in August, so again, this is late September. This is probably only his second or third flight, where I'm going out to kind of show him some of the maneuvers. The plan for this flight was for me to show him some of the maneuvers that he would be doing in his private pilot training. And he just wanted to see how well he would do. He has I won't call it a weak stomach, but gets a little motion sick, want to see some of the things that he'd be doing. So we're at the airport. We get in the plane, all things normal. Weather that day was pretty calm. I remember clearly there was no crosswind. There wasn't anything really out of the ordinary. It was starting to get cool, so the air was pretty good that day. And we taxi out, and one of my instructors was always adamant that you should never get on a runway or taxi out on a runway without being able to have a clear view of final. And I don't know what airport you might come from, but if you're at an airport and you may have to taxi back, you obviously have a clear view of final. Some run-up areas don't provide the best angle or view. And some uncontrolled airports, Wally, I'll do a full 360 if I'm going to go to make sure I can see the entire final and base of both sides. This day we did the same thing. I'm talking to Matt. I'm telling him, look, we're turning back to get a real good view of final. There's nothing coming down on final. The instructor that I flew with through my instrument training would always say, look, you can choose to not look and they can clear you to go. But if you get hit and die, the controller's going home, you're not.
Yeah. You
have to control the situation. So we look, we talk about it. We've been cleared for takeoff. We line up on the center line. The throttle goes in, and airspeed's coming alive. Normal things are happening. And we get to 55 knots in a 172. We rotate back. The front wheel comes up. And literally, I remember clear as day that the wheels came off the ground and a helicopter came down right in front of us. The people that were behind us said no more than 100 feet. We had no more than 100 feet wheels 2 inches off the ground at 55, 60 knots with a helicopter right in front of us. And if you didn't know it, helicopters have big yellow stripes on the top of their props that you can see when you're above them.
I didn't know that. I guess I always see the rotors from the bottom, but that's nice to know. You don't want to see that. So, what was your initial reaction? All of a sudden, you just realized you just about hit a helicopter. What was your reaction?
My reaction was to take, I guess, all the training that I did have. I remember very clearly, like, not letting myself pull up on the yoke. Like, I just knew through all my stall training, through everything I'd ever been taught, everybody talks about the pattern. Everybody talks about the airport complex. You do not want to be slow and low. That's when people get really hurt. So while I was worried about running into the helicopter, something instinctually took over and said, well, if I get low and slow here, I'm going to get hurt anyway, so I'm just going to make sure I keep flying the aircraft. And if the airport that I was at has some buildings pretty close to the left side of that runway, and there's another runway to the right of that, so I just took and put a little slight left bank into the controls so that I would hopefully miss the helicopter. Luckily, obviously, I'm sitting here today, so we missed the helicopter. Probably didn't miss the buildings by much. And was shocked. I mean, we've all been in a surprising situation. The shock is an understatement. You don't expect to see anything on a runway. Like, if you see a bird, you probably freak out a little bit.
Yeah.
Bird's probably going to lose. I think I could have very easily lost to that helicopter.
So once you got the airplane under control and got it in a decent flying state, what was when you push the talk button, what was your first communication to ATC?
Well, I might inject it in this track somewhere if I can, but that was way too freaking close. And I wanted to say a lot of other words, but I knew that I was on a public radio channel, so I didn't use the other F word that I probably wanted to use.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure that there was a tower, and they cleared me to take off, and they cleared him to land. I say him. I'm 99% sure it was a him. But it wasn't out of the ordinary, right? You at an airport that has 6, 7, 8 planes in the pattern, maybe some helicopters. There's people being cleared to land all the time. I've gone back and listened to that tape over and over, and I of course I held myself accountable, and I can't find anything I really did wrong. But at the same time, did I hesitate at all? Did I hesitate by teaching this friend of mine to make sure he looks back? But I have the runway until I'm clear. They didn't have the right to clear the other person. But they did. It was almost exactly what my instructor said. And of course, I've stayed up many a night thinking, what if I would have pushed that throttle in 1 second later? 1 second later, I would be dead. There's no way 1 second at 55 knots, I would not have just plowed right into the side of that helicopter.
Right.
1 second is either a miracle or luck or something, because that's all that was. One more second, we would have been right into each other's spinning things.
So continue to tell us about the rest of the flight. What now? Did you go out and do the maneuvers and then come back, or did you just turn around and come back? Here you are at 100 feet. You've recovered. The airplane's flying again. What happened next?
Well, I think my heart was racing. I know we climbed on out. I've looked at the track log today before we record. We appeared to just climb out and head west like normal. I remember talking to Matt, who, we're partners and still really close friends today. I remember that day talking to Matt and him not realizing anything was abnormal. Remember, this is his third trip to a runway. He's never been on a runway. So he's like, well, what's the big deal? And I'm like, dude, helicopters don't land in front of you when you're on the go. Like, this is not normal.
Right.
He's a passenger riding going, this is cool. We're just going to come right next to each other when we come and go. And I'm like, that's completely wrong. He had already taken one lesson, and his instructor was next in line behind us. And he's the one who, when we came back, said, I saw it. I knew y'all were going to die. I saw it happening. You were no more than 100 feet apart. So his instructor had a lot to teach him about what was coming in the future. But we keep flying out, and I remember talking to Matt and him being so calm, like it was no big deal. And I'm like freaking out, going, Matt, that's not normal. Don't ever take off when there's a helicopter on the runway.
Right.
But I also was so mad that I knew if I came back, I would have probably stopped on the runway, got out of my plane, and walked right up to the tower and started throwing punches. I was so frustrated. And then I calmed down. I think so we did go fly. We did some maneuvers. I thought that was the best thing for me to do, was to just let some of my energy out in the West practice area and deal with it by doing what I wanted to do that day and not just coming back, which probably in some respects might have saved my flying career, because I don't know what it would be like to come that close and then get right out of the aircraft.
Right.
To only have people trying to talk you to get back in it, maybe when you didn't want to.
So when we hear the term road rage, we think of driving a car, but I guess it could happen in an airplane a little bit too.
Runway rage was real that day, because I also remember what the helicopter said to the tower. Once I clicked my mic and said, "Whoa, that was way too freaking close," the helicopter also said, "What was that about? We're done for the day." And you can imagine that a helicopter that has been cleared to land has a Cessna almost hit them. Their perspective is very different than mine. I have my perspective. They have a perspective of, we are cleared to land, and this guy almost hit us, right? They too know the true story of all the clearings that happened, but they quit for the day for sure. I know it. And I know a couple of helicopter pilots. I'm not a helicopter pilot, so if you're listening and you have a different version, please let me know. But I heard that because they were doing auto rotations, that's the only reason we probably lived. They didn't have any power in that helicopter. They were doing practice engine out landings coming straight down. And so I've been told by other helicopter pilots, had they been full power to land, that the downwash from those rotors probably would have flipped that little Cessna and we would have been killed. Not even hitting them maybe, but because of the downwash from their rotors. But I don't know. I think I flew. I came back. We were at the school. Everybody wanted to talk about it. It was the buzz on the airport that day, how close it was, and I just kept thinking, man, I was really lucky. And I went home and hugged my family, and I could just keep daydreaming about all those parts being spread out on the runway. I just kept thinking, what would have been one more second.
Yeah. So, have you talked to the helicopter pilot?
I never did. I never made contact with them. I think I spent a lot more time trying to talk to chief pilots here, other friends in my network. I remember calling my instructor, Justin Meeks, that day, going, "This is what happened. What do you think? What should I do? How should I handle it?" Some people thought that I should have filed some paperwork, filed a complaint, done things. Some didn't think I should. And at the end of the day, I weighed all those things out, called a whole bunch of people, and I didn't pursue it as if I wanted to get a bunch of people in trouble, but I wanted a bunch of people to learn from it. And that's why I tell the story today. It's embarrassing. You almost hit a helicopter, but I really don't think I could have done much to change it.
Right. The thing that I hear, you've told me this story, and this happened three years ago. So, in theory, you slept over 1,000 times since this happened. But what I hear is this passion in your voice, and this sounds like something that happened about 4 days ago. This doesn't sound like something that happened over 1,000 days ago, 3 years ago. So when I hear you talk about it, I get a little emotional thinking about it as well. I mean, we've all, if you fly long enough, you're gonna be in these situations where human factors come into play, and this does sound like is a human factor thing. But for the grace of God, you're here to talk about it, and we can all learn about it. I'd just be curious to know, if the helicopter even saw you.
Yeah, everyone, the perspective from the majority of people that I talked to were like, why didn't he see you? Most of those trainers have clear floors or some view hole out the bottom. But if I put myself in their shoes, they're teaching and training. They've been cleared to land at a towered airport. Yes, they're supposed to be looking, but if they're teaching, I can see them getting a little fixated on what's going inside inside of that cockpit as well.
Yeah, I'm not a helicopter pilot as well, but I would think the big thing for helicopters would be auto rotations. That's probably the most risky maneuver they do, I guess. Your focus is elsewhere. It should be looking out as well. But I could see not, because that is a big deal to auto rotate a helicopter.
No doubt. And I think I would have loved to, and if he's listening to this someday, let's talk, because I would have loved to have caught up, because that was kind of my view walking back into the flight school that day was, I didn't have the big one, and we should all talk about it and learn about it and really be thankful for each other that we all missed by such a small margin, and have the opportunity to go home and be with our families. I think there are some lessons that whether I knew them then, I'd like to make sure people know them now. And it was the ingraining that my instructor did for me to look, right? So I did look. Now I've incorporated other things that I do before I take an active runway, and technology helps provide that. I'm an avid Stratus user. I won't start a day without turning my Stratus on. Even in my G1000 with traffic, I make sure I have my Stratus on, just in case it picks up traffic that maybe is not on my screen yet,
Right.
And two different systems, two different traffic sources. I want to make sure I'm seeing what I can see. But now I think I would see something, right above the runway. I would know it, and I would at least click it before I took the active runway. It might not have prevented it or avoided it 100%, but I also say I don't just look on that final. I think while I thought that was a great tip and something I share with everyone, I do more looking everywhere than just on the final. You think at a controlled airport with an active runway that is landing a certain direction that no one else would be coming a different direction. But it really could. So I look both final. I look on the final of the wrong runway in case someone happens to be coming the wrong way. I look up, I look around, I make sure that nothing's in my airspace of that runway. The other thing I think that's changed for me, more because of experience, and you probably hear it better than a 10-hour pilot hears it, but I am much more situationally aware of things once my run-up's complete. Like I get into full-on situational awareness mode.
Right.
Every tail number they're calling out, I'm thinking and visualizing them in the airspace. If they say November 1, 2, 3, 4, you're clear for closed traffic, squawk such and such. I listen for their next call to know where they're coming from and how far they are. So then I have this little, almost a radar blip in my brain of somebody coming in from the northwest, 5 miles, 4 miles. Am I going to get out, or are they going to be here with me?
Yeah.
If I'm leaving, am I going to cross paths with them? I start thinking pipeline so-and-so coming in, transitioning through your airspace. I'm thinking about that guy or girl. I'm thinking about that person. Somebody picking up a banner. I'm thinking about what are they doing? What's their position on the field? Life flight's leaving sometimes. Where are they going? What altitude would they be at? I just really start putting all these bugs in my brain to think about what's going on, because I think that's the one thing I could have done better, but I'm not sure a 120-hour pilot is supposed to be there yet.
Right.
Would be great if they could be, but I do think one of those big lessons is now looking in a lot of different places, number one. Number two, creating that situational awareness map in your brain, especially at an uncontrolled airport. If it's only 3 dots, you should be able to keep up with that, kind of know where they're at. And then I think what we learned throughout our private training is so very true. I think if I would have pulled up, we would have got hurt really, really bad, if not killed, because I know we would have stalled the aircraft. There's just no way that plane could have held altitude if we were at a 20-degree pitch. I mean, it's going to stall, and I'm going to hit the ground pretty hard. Maybe even I missed the helicopter, but I would have stalled the aircraft.
Right.
Never mind if I would have put any rudder into that thing. And so I think all that training that we might get a little bored with, maybe is not the right word, but what I'm thinking, bored with in the practice area where we keep doing power on stalls. You're like, oh, this is never going to happen to me. Well, not intentionally. I can assure you it probably won't ever happen to you intentionally at 6 feet off the ground, but man, that's an ideal situation where that could have happened.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I could have recovered. I can recover from 3,000 feet pretty regularly, but I don't know if I can recover from 20.
Right. You know, I had a incident, and quite honestly, I don't even have it written down in my notes. It had totally gone out of my thought process. But just about a week ago, I was administering a check ride, and we ended up at a uncontrolled airport about 20 miles from here, and we were doing the landings over there, and we were the only airplane in the pattern, so it was very convenient. And we called that we were on a left base for runway 35. I should say another airplane had called in and said that they were coming in. They were going to land runway 35. And so they said they were at about a 6-mile final. And then we called that we were on a left base for 35. And then they made a call that they were on a 1-mile final for runway 35. And here we are on a left base. I estimated we were on about a 3/4 mile left base for runway 35, and they're on a 1-mile final for 35. And the applicant, at this point, I just said, let's get out of here. And we just climbed, and we announced that we were just going to leave the traffic pattern to the east, and then we're going to try to find out where that other airplane was. Well, as we turned around and headed back to the airplane, I looked down and I saw the airplane rolling out on runway 17. So the airplane had landed on runway 17, and had we kept doing what we were doing, we were going to land runway 35. They were going to land runway 17. The winds were calm, so really either runway was appropriate from a wind standpoint. But there was a situation where, we didn't see the person, so our thought process was let's just get out of here, regroup, and come back and try it again. But I'd really totally forgotten about that. A lot of things going on since then. But that's the idea of situational awareness. And when that airplane did call in, they said they were on final for runway 35, and so they were just they had gotten things turned around. And
Man.
So that's an excellent point. Don't just look at final for the active runway. Look at final for the other runway, especially at uncontrolled airports.
No doubt. I mean, we all make mistakes. That could have been a really big one. I've had an experience similar to that where you're coming in opposite of one another on a calm day. Obviously, those probably don't get talked about or thought about in such a way, but that's going to be really painful if those two end up hitting each other for sure. And it's avoidable. It truly is. And in that case, not judgmental, but it sounds like that person was in the wrong by calling the wrong runway. But I don't think he probably meant it. I don't think they were trying to do it. Right?
Absolutely.
They weren't trying to be wrong. And with COVID, the FAA towers are closing early. I've heard some crazy radio traffic around here late in the day where there's literally, at this airport, there's 3 runways that can be active at any one time when the towers close: a water runway, a short runway, and a big runway. And if people are landing the wrong way, that could be 6 runways with dozens of planes in it going, it could be really crazy. So I think there's reasons also to maybe make the decision that today's not the day I'm going to practice in the pattern.
Right.
I'd rather be here tomorrow to practice on a day that might not be so busy.
Exactly.
So that could be a really good takeaway as well. So long story short, look both ways, look up and down also. If you have the opportunity or capabilities of using a traffic source, make sure you can take advantage of that and see the traffic source, so that you maybe might see something that you can't visually see with your eyes. You're seeing it with a tool. And then that situational awareness, kind of that map in your brain of the radar of what's going on around that airport, both taxiing on the ground and in the air, so you can keep it up. And that if you can't keep up with it, maybe you take pause and don't go that day, right? It's just too much. So, while it is near and dear to my heart, and why I am very lucky to be here today, and I'm glad my wife didn't prove me right that this thing is dangerous. I don't think it's dangerous. I think it's just a day that all things came together, and I came real close to hitting something else, and I lived through that day, and hopefully you learned something from that. Anything to add, Wally, as we wrap up today?
No, just keep your ears open. You know, one thing I see on check rides is applicants feel the need to talk all the time, and I always tell them we've got 2 ears, we've got 1 mouth, so maybe, just maybe, listening is more important than talking. So that might be a subject for another day, but we hope you're enjoying the podcasts. Come back next week. We're going to talk about paper versus plastic.
Paper versus plastic. I bet you get asked that a lot as a DPE.
All the time.
Until next week, thanks for listening to Behind the Prop. Share it with your friends.
Bravo Tango Papa, we are clear of the active runway and would like to taxi to park.
Bravo Tango Papa, taxi to park. Great show. Have a nice day.
Taxi to park, thanks. You too, Bravo Tango Papa.
Thanks for listening to Behind the Prop. Please follow us on social media at Behind the Prop or visit our website, www.behindtheprop.com. Until next week, fly safe, everyone.